Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Pleasure to be here. I just want to say a few contextual words by way of the sort of title around therapeutics, biologics and small molecules to really sort of highlight a couple of focal points, really. Most of you will be aware around issues of R&D productivity and the challenges facing not only academia but industry and also getting new medicines to patients in the last 10, 20 years. And a lot of what we're trying to do today is thinking about different ways of finding new molecules, new drugs, and different approaches to drug discovery. I'm then just going to finish up saying a little bit about the sort of local ecosystem as well and place that in context. So there was an interesting thought piece that was produced by Kelvin Stott about a year ago, which looked into R&D productivity and really identified one of the principal reasons why there's no longer any low-hanging fruit in this space. It is getting harder. And one of the reasons is that as you get more and more improvements in your therapy, your standard of care model of which you're testing your new therapies coming in, the bar is being raised all the time. So it means that the scope for improvement is diminishing as you go forward. You then add against this the cost of new molecular entities, and you find that the added value decreases, whereas the cost per NME increases. And some people have looked at this and said, well, by 2020, the rate of return on pharmaceutical R&D is probably going to trend towards zero. Views differ on that, but what that does say is there are fairly systematic challenges that have to be faced across the system as we go forward. And Chris, I think in his presentation with what he's been doing at the Medicines Discovery Catapult, will talk about some of these different innovations. Here in Oxford, there are different ways of looking at this. And one of the work that's been done, obviously, that was mentioned earlier is around the Structured Genomics Consortium and around open innovation. What can you do in a patent-free environment within an academic context to enable you to generate new target profiles and new types of inhibitors? And actually, that is looking outside of where a lot of industry will focus, in those higher risk areas, which are much more challenging, and where industry, with its expertise in the translational space, will look at what comes out of this. I think there's tremendous potential in the future looking around predictive analytics, clinical AI, and all of that to really bring together what's kind of a process of reverse translation. Instead of going from the bench to the bedside, we actually look at going from the sort of bedside back to the bench and then rework the innovations into that. On this open innovation model as well, there are interesting ideas about can you extend a pathway that goes from the research into target identification and then ultimately into preclinical and clinical work that maybe you could do in a more collaborative way, finding new consortia of opportunities. And some of the work being done in this space with aging, which covers work being done here in Oxford, Birmingham, Medicines Discovery Catapult and Dundee, and the CRIC, is looking at how you can put together these new consortia in a very exciting way. And a lot of this plays into the new life sciences industrial strategy that's really been set out by Sir John Bell as a blueprint for going forward and keeping the UK competitive. In our own region in Oxfordshire, there's an opportunity that's come up over the last sort of few months on the back of the government's industrial strategy with the idea of having a number of trailblazer sites. And the first of those is in Manchester, and then in the West Midlands, and Oxfordshire is the third. And the Oxfordshire piece was put together on the back of ideas around multidisciplinary convergence of technologies, such as health, space, digital, quantum computing, and finding ways in which we can develop new industries and apply these different technologies into areas that haven't been thought of. So what would the impact of quantum computing be, say, on drug discovery, and how you could actually do more in silico working is something in the future that will be very interesting. So this is just to say that there's now a lot of work going into what an industrial strategy across the region would look like, and working with government to come up with some key things that will enable this region to actually progress even more. And the Local Enterprise Partnership is leading on this, and this is really a call to say if people have an interest in giving an input into this, whether it's around infrastructure, roads, connectivity between different industries, new ideas for partnerships, all of that would be very welcome. So it just remains me to say thank you very much for Vasiliki and Cora and Paul and other Paul for all the work they put into organising this, and I hope you have a very enjoyable afternoon. Thank you.